Welcome to the New York Now podcast, a modern wholesale market for retailers and specialty buyers seeking diversity and discovery. Gathering twice a year in America's design capital, New York City, it's where buyers and designers unearth a refreshed and dedicated collection of eclectic lifestyle products. This episode has been brought to you in collaboration with the New York Now sponsored June 2020 Independent Handbag Designer Awards. Emily Blumenthal, founder of the Independent Handbag Designer Award, Handbag Design One-on-One, author and adjunct professor of Entrepreneurship of FIT, Emily is known as the Handbag Fairy Godmother, who brings unknown brands to the forefront. She is a trend source expert and understands the insatiable appetite for emerging and undiscovered designers. Her dedication has prompted collaborations between emerging talent and brands like Swarovski, Timberland, Kate Spade, Kenneth Cole, Guess, Nine West, as well as Saks of Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, and Macy's. She has been featured in InStyle magazine, Harper's Bazaar, The Associated Press, CBS's The Early Morning Show, The Today Show, and the New York Times Style Edition, as well as many other media outlets. In Dishing on Design with New York Now, as stated in the New York Times Style article, The Handbag Hopefuls, Emily Blumenthal mentors a new generation of purse designers. We are delighted to have her joining us today with Sandra Kehoe, New York Now's Senior Exhibitor Marketing Manager.
Hi, Emily. So nice to have you join us today for this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, delighted. So much to cover in so little time, but would love to just have you tell us, how did you get your start?
Well, if we go back in the way back machine, I think that's what it's called. I suppose you always know when you're destined to have your own business. I think that organically kind of, they say you follow in the steps of what your family does, whether or not you want to,
Right.
good or bad. So my mom was an educator and my father has always had his own business, and I'm Garmento offspring. So I think perhaps may have been inevitable I would end up doing both. My mom always had a small business, and I was not a designer by trade by any level, but I knew that I think I was meant to do something myself.
Right.
And I don't know if it's maybe having ADD, which can work for some or not work for others. But I think what allows people who have that kind of quick moving attention span is your barriers to entry are minimized. And the risks seem mollified on such a grand level because you just kind of jump right in, for better or for worse, without thinking like, okay, what could happen here and what could go wrong? You're like, well, I have an idea. Let's just go for it. So when I was in business school, and this is after I had packed up, moved to Russia, worked for a TV network, and then that fell through, and then I concocted a job working for a Cartoon Network out of my kitchen.
So funnily enough, my background is in media. So I'm an accidental handbag person. I did not go to school for design. And I feel like at this juncture, after you've been doing things for so long, that's kind of moot. However, design is such an interesting skill set that I would never tell someone not to do it. However, I feel like the beauty of, I guess you could say, my path was that I kind of reverse engineered my way into it. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is it all comes back to who your customer is. And even that goes down to what your job is, or who being your own best publicist. So my whole thing was I figured out pretty young that I can sell. That if I get people's attention and I can get them to listen, I can sell them on it. So I started doing that in college. I worked for the Michigan Daily, and that was where I learned that, oh my God, I made more money there than anybody had in the history of the newspaper, which I thought was kind of sexy, especially being female, which, even in college, you don't pay so much attention to, but you're like, you know what? I can knock you all out, so who cares?
Yeah.
Like, I have arrived, suckers. So why not? So that kind of has been my path of finding I'm good at something and then knocking down 100 million doors to try and get to where I need to be, and then realizing, like, wait, maybe I should try something else. And, the path just evolved from there. So I fell into doing handbags when I was in business school, and I was working for this little crummy little magazine at the time. At this point, it was like part of my anecdotal life. But I had a boyfriend that was a DJ. I was going to work, going to school, and then going out, and I ended up becoming his agent. I mean, it was like, I didn't want to do that, but I think if you have the hustler gene, that's what you do. And I saw with my social anthropology, I guess you could say, that no one had really just designed a handbag to hold on to when you go out. And I've heard so many people tell the same story, but I was living it, going out every single night and watching these girls do the ceremonial dance around their bags and then having their bags stolen. And I said, wouldn't that be interesting if? And I just kind of ran with it. And this whole element of having ADD or ADHD or whatever you want to call it, which is, I think, allows a lot of people to be not risk averse. That's a double negative, but I am not. I tend to jump into things and just push forward, not even thinking of all the reasons why I shouldn't or all the things that could go wrong. And I think being aware of the barriers to entry is one thing, but having them stop you is another. So I just pushed forward, and being Garmento offspring, I knew the lay of the land. So started a handbag line and then patented it because, well, why not?
Why not? So would it be fair to say that you kind of accidentally became a handbag designer just from the environment that you were in and recognizing a clear need?
I think at that point, I think that was one of those, after being in sales, ad sales specifically, and selling to customers and kind of learning, not even being aware of figuring out that before you open up a clothing store, you have to know how to shop. You need to know what people are looking for before you can create something. And I think that's a huge misconception with people who start their businesses, especially in design, right? Because everyone, and there was a boutique owner that I loved. His name was Steve. He had this boutique in the West Village called Verb. And he was so good to new designers. Rebecca Minkoff got her start there. Monica Bactier got their start there. I did, although I don't think I'm in the same playing field. But he had said that if you are creating a handbag, you are not making a Van Gogh. Remember that. Remember that you want people to come back. You want them to come back and buy more. And you want their experience from opening the box to see, feel, touch, to their whole experience with your product to be something that will make them happy. So that even goes down to looking at the price tag. So it's like little things like that stay with you in terms of how the experience should be in order to have a sale. And then once you have that sale, how can you replicate it? There's so many nuggets. You just don't even know. We could talk for hours. I've got them. So that's just kind of how the world of handbags started for Emily. And at the same time, I guess, I started teaching, which was also an accident. The learning annex, which beats me, I suppose. But those little things that are on the streets where, like, learn to start a business, learn to do this. I think because I was in school, my methodology of teaching was purely, teaching how to start. And they would always have like the hottest flavor of the month handbag designer teach the class. But I think my mentality was that if you're signing up for a course, you should have some solid takeaways. So I made it very clear in terms of, this is how you start from inception to launch to repeat business to customer acquisition to resources to, and then currently then it would go a step further to social media, to philanthropy, to social responsibility, to sustainability. And you have to make sure all those touch points are checked. Now, I mean, especially now, transparency. all those things need to be, there in order to truly be a brand, a successful one, or as we say, brands with fans. So I fell into teaching, and then from teaching at the Learning Annex, I started teaching at Laboratory Institute of Merchandising, which they now call LIM, which then went to Parsons, and recently I've been teaching entrepreneurship at FIT. So all of this, this weird path, each thing has kind of taken me to the next step of figuring out where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do, and how it can, at this point, impact others, going beyond from just making a handbag to what a handbag does for somebody, and then what do the awards do for the people who are making those bags, and how can that make an impact? Because, that's, at the end of the day, we all need newness. The industry needs innovation, and as awful as this pandemic has been, and especially with what's going on with this current climate, this is when the barrel gets scraped. This is awful for everybody, but this is a perfect time to go back to your roots and look, and you see all these retailers falling to pieces. And I think this is the reckoning, and this is where the newness and the innovation comes out. We've totally gone all over the shop, but I think it works.
Well, on that note, what is it about handbags? Why are they still such an important accessory or such an important part of a person's, look and persona?
Well, I don't think it's so much important. It's as people, you work for a trade show, right? It is your job to help provide business to business, in that you want to make sure that buyers come so these small businesses can get their products out there, right? So what are they providing? Are they providing a need, or are they providing a want? Because right now, with everybody's budgets and so many people losing their jobs, we can all speak as a collective that half of our contacts have either been let go or furloughed. So, this forces your consumer, your customer, to take a deep dive in terms of what he or she needs to spend their money on. So we all have to go back to thinking, what are we creating? Is it a need, or is it a want? And a handbag, no matter how you slice it, is still a need. So it might not be, the kind of handbag might not be the want, but having a bag is a need. And I think, the rise of athleisure has also turned that from a want to a need in itself. I need to work comfortably and feel good about myself. So I think part of the evolution of developing a brand is making sure that you are creating something that people can see through and say, you know what, I need this, and this will also sustain my want as well. So that is where I think the value of handbags, and why I'm confident that handbags as a category will presumably bounce back. It might not be today, but it doesn't necessarily need to fall into the it bag, which is what we tout with the Handbag Awards. But it is something that people will always need to have one way or another.
Excellent point. Excellent point. You mentioned the Handbag Awards. I would love to dive into at what point did, the idea of the Handbag Awards come to you? What was the genesis for it? And tell us a little bit about that.
So the awards, it's once again, I became an accidental event planner, and I was kicking myself. I didn't do this first before I got married, because my wedding would have been so much better. Plus, there probably would have been gift bags. So, oh man. Anyway, so I had, within the span of having my handbag line, which was called Yasmina, which I had patented, which I still find funny that I thought, with no experience whatsoever, that I was like, I should patent this. And I don't think so much that it would work now, but it was a design patent and not a utility patent, where in this day and age, having a utility patent makes it much more sellable. Disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. This is just my personal experience. But having had a design patent on this little handbag to hold on to when you go out that was a wallet wristlet fusion and had a bracelet and a ring. And it's, I created an item which was so amazing, but also a curse at the same time, because another thing you learn is merchandising. And if a buyer doesn't know where to put your product, then it goes nowhere, which makes things hard to sell. So within the span of my, I guess, third licensing deal that turned out to be a disaster, I had met a woman in jury duty a few years back, as you do, which is how I met my book agent. Because as a rule of thumb, as I always say to my students, be nice to everybody. You don't know what they do or where they're from. So it's so important. It's like trade show etiquette 101. Talk to everybody. So she had said, you should write a book about this and how to be a handbag designer when you're not trained in design. And that was kind of like the template of how all of my classes were and how I still run my classes today. In the midst of this, I refer to it almost as a divorce, as this last licensing deal I had had. It was just a mess at the end, that I had basically written the whole book in the midst of all this. It was a good distraction, and I was on QVC and everything. And the idea of going back to bootstrapping was just so unappealing after you go from doing everything yourself, packing, shipping, going to customs, picking up your product at JFK, to having someone else do it, like not having to read the guidebooks of Nordstrom with a highlighter, knowing that someone else will do it. And I just couldn't go back. So in the midst of the quote unquote licensing divorce, I'd said to my agent, okay, so the book's written. I need something to do. When are you going to get that sorted for me? Because I knew I wasn't selling it, so I didn't know how long it would take. And she laughed and laughed. She's like, "Oh, books don't get picked up just because you wrote them." And I said, "Oh, I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me that before?" That's news. Right? I was like, "That's not sexy. I have this amazing book." I literally, it was like Sesame Street. I was like, "Okay, so the book's done. When does my tour start?" And she was like, "Yeah, no, wake up. It's not like that." So she's like, "You got to do something, but I recommend you stay within handbags." So then I thought, okay, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? So because of teaching, I knew so many people within the Garment Center, having taken my students to different places and, introduction to how the Garment Center works. And I had a relationship with someone at Magic. And I spoke to them and I said, "What do you think about an award show for handbag designers?" And they're like, "That's a great idea. We'll give you some money." I was like, "Oh, wait, so you'll pay me for that?" "Oh, okay." And so then I was like, okay, how would that make sense? What would this look like? So, okay, if we're speaking classification, within the classification of handbags, how would one see this? Okay, I'm teaching. We need a student category. What next? You need a handmade category. Then you need a green category. Literally, this is the funniest thing, that all these categories were there from day one. And I said, okay, we need a socially responsible category. We need where people go to other countries and give back. I mean, this is purely based on my relationships and experience in dealing with other designers and having been to so many trade shows, and literally, as I call it, retail anthropology, or Paco Underhill coined that. But that's what it was. And talking to people who ended up becoming my demographic and learning more about what they were doing. So, and then I said, okay, we need a best overall category 2. I think the only category I added after the fact was audience fan favorite. And then 2 years later, we did retail. But from the moment we started, I said, okay, if you're doing this, thinking from a media perspective to make it sellable, okay, we need to honor somebody, because that's what an award show would have. You always need to make sure that there's a tie-in. And then you need to have a charity. So that's what I did. And I said, okay, let me go find sponsors, because I knew I couldn't give money. Let me find a sponsor who I could match up with this category, who we can create with some sort of integrated media property prize, where they work with the designer, or they could do a collection, or the designer can do a collaboration with them, or even an apprenticeship. How about that? Organically templatize this whole thing, not even knowing what the hell I was doing. And then the other thing was that I said, okay, what's the fastest way to get the word out? And this all predates the interweb and social media, truly to the level of where it's at now. I said, okay, I have to make it free to apply, because then I'll get university support, because you could never get a university to jump on board if you're charging students, because students, the mantra is they're all poor.
Absolutely.
And then I said, okay, we need a preliminary judging panel of important people. Let me ask my blogger friends if they can help out. And then I know we needed a bigger panel after the first round. So let me go to all my sponsors and see if they could pick their most important person to judge who they think the winner should be. And I had taken my students, strangely enough, to the Museum of the City of New York because they had a Judith Lieber exhibition. And I called the curator and said, I have this idea. What do you think? We can tie it to what's going on to your current Judith Lieber exhibit. And she's like, sure, that's a great idea. And there it went. 400 people applied, 450 people attended, and buyers showed up. Like, it was bizarre. And the Museum of the City of New York is on 103rd Street and 5th Avenue, or it's way up there. It is not something you can just stumble upon, way, way, way up there. So the fact that all these people turned up was bizarre. And I profited. I was also 7.5 months pregnant, which, why not? And then we honored Carlos Falchi because I knew him.
Wow.
And we had a retrospective because I had a media mindset. I was like, okay, when people are coming, they need to look at something. We need to have a retrospective of all his past bags. They put up a case for him. It was hilarious. And it was, once again, a gift and a curse because all these designers who I didn't even know were like on stage crying, like about how that they thought this was going to change their lives. And I was like, oh, wow. I guess this is needed. There it is.
Yeah. I mean, that must have been such an exhilarating, life-affirming experience, for it all to come together so well and to have, as you say, to have these, young designers being emotionally affected by just the importance that they were putting into being recognized for these awards. That must have been very satisfying for you.
I think it was, but to me, it was, I don't know. I'm not, for better or for worse, I'm not so much of a stop and smell the roses person. It was like, okay, I guess I should look at it for what am I going to do next year? Literally, I moved on and then I said, okay, it's got to be in June because there's no market. It's got to be on a Wednesday because then people won't have any excuses that they can't not make it, because once you get the beginning of the week or the end of the week, people are traveling. People are always here for Wednesdays, strangely enough. And I made sure it was after Memorial Day and before 4th of July. So I immediately took, a month off and started up again and had a kid and started working like right off the bat. So I was just looking at it much like any small business person is, that, okay, I made this much money. How can I make more? So I appreciated and was grateful that it had an impact on changing lives and everything. But other than the awakening of how badly the industry needed something and how this platform was so long overdue, and purely the idea came about because I had applied to every single design competition that it had existed and never got anywhere. And when you're running a small business, you are so in your own head and so much in your own space to the point where it's almost detrimental, right? Like, you don't have a judge or a jury, you're taking no feedback. So the only people that really tell you what's right and wrong are the buyers, if you're lucky enough to get in front of them. So this element of needing a platform for education, needing a place where designers could get seen, needing a way for people to get noticed and recognized, and then even more so knowing who my contemporaries were as handbag designers. I saw what the kick-ass stuff they were doing, but nobody else was. So why shouldn't they get more exposure? I knew I could do that.
It all kind of ties in with your high octane can-do personality. Like you say, you had a very successful inaugural awards. You took a short breath to pop out a baby and regroup, and you were straight into how can I do this again next year, and how can I make it better and bigger, and how can I grow this? So kudos to you. If we can just fast forward to 2020, And I say that only because I've no doubt that every year for the last 14 years you have continued to build and grow and expand the Independent Handbag Awards to what they are today. But I think 2020 was probably your most challenging. I think, would that be fair to say, in that, for those listeners who are not aware, the 2020 Independent Handbag Design Awards went virtual this year. Would you share with our listeners how that came about?
Well, it was not my choice. So there's that.
Right.
It was chosen for me, much like homeschool was chosen not by me either. So I think, it was an interesting turn of events because, to be totally transparent, this year was gearing up to be my best and biggest year, 1,000%. I mean, I was jazzed. This event is such an undertaking that it is literally like throwing a wedding every single year. And when you do a red carpet event, you are only as good as the last one you've done. So, if the smallest detail to running out of booze, or, we had, your caterer doesn't turn up on time, or, there was a flub with the people you have seating. Like, any little hiccup you have is something
right.
that you always think about. It's an event.
Right.
So you always think about, how can I make that better? Because I have to. So we had a lot of really, really, really big plans. And then this happened pretty quickly. I was woken up with the reality that we have a minimum of 50% of our applicants, of our finalists, fly in. We write visas for designers. I've written so many letters for people to come to this country to get, I think it's the O1 visa, the artist visa, I'm not even sure, because we've had more people come to the US as a result of the handbag awards that are now working for big brands because they were able to as a result of the press and exposure, that I said, okay, what are we supposed to do? We can't just cut that. And then with the masks and everything moving so rapidly, especially in New York, it was pretty clear that there was no way that we would be able to have people sit shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
And, maybe it's a female thing of guilt, like, oh my God, all the people we're going to let down. Even the SBA theater, who's been so good to us, I call them up almost in tears, like, I'm so sorry, I don't think we can do this. I was apologizing as a result of what was going on for their business,
Right.
So I had spoken to a lot of people, and they said, okay, well, push it forward, just do it in a couple months. You could do it in August. And I don't know, I didn't buy into that. And I think if you're doing something, you do it or you don't. It's that simple. And pushing it back, and as I said, this isn't a university, this isn't rolling admissions, this is an award show. And it's a competition. So if I had designers, we go live January 1st. If we have designers who are applying as of Jan 1, and now I'm in March 3rd, what about the people, and my application process is closing the end of April. We're already more than 50% halfway through the process. So all those people who worked so hard, and the students and, people in other countries, making sure that the production and sampling, whatever, that their bags are ready. I can't do that. I just felt like there's got to be a way, and there's got to be a better way to do it. And P.S., I'm so relatable. So, so I said, you know what? How can I make this happen? And I spoke to a dear friend, colleague of mine, Trey Bodge. She's on our preliminary panel, which is made up of all bloggers, social media elite. And she's like, you know what? If you've been a pioneer for creating all of this already, then you should continue that path. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make this into something digital live stream, because you've templatized it. It's down to a science. You can do this blindfolded. Just do the exact same thing, but do it digitally. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So that's exactly what we did. So I said, okay, so we did exactly the same thing. Instead of having our preliminary panel in a beautiful plush hotel with booze and cocktails and nibblies and expensive street salads, and going through all the bags one by one. My panel of amazing women were so kind and sat through a 5-hour Zoom of going through every single bag one by one by one. We still managed to get over 1,000 applicants. I was blown away. I didn't think it would happen. But, again, this is a time for people who are barrel scrapers to rise up, because the landscape is open for people to get attention. So the smart ones will capitalize on that. So we did that. And then we Zoomed all of the finalists to tell them they made it to the next round. It was a lot of Zoom. And we asked all of our sponsors to not only submit their brand video, but then also submit their video as if they were on stage. So speak as though you're presenting the award. And there was so much footage to put together that it was almost like a movie, and then tying it all in with the live stream of the phone calls being live and shooting it live and me talking to myself in my office, which is no longer my office. It was definitely an undertaking, but I knew it would work. I was not worried that it would not, because like I said, people need something to look forward to. And this little award show that I have created has turned into the beacon of hope more than anything. So, we always say it's the Independent Fairy Awards meets the Oscars for handbags. And I think it worked out, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope our listeners have an opportunity to log in and view the awards, the 2020 Independent Handbag Design Awards, because they were spectacular. They were emotional. They were exciting and exhilarating. And to be able to be a fly on the wall participant, seeing all that excitement and just, they were absolutely.
Did you cry?
Many times.
Did you cry?
Many times I cried.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's great.
Like,
but,
I know I can't see Dondrel, but I'm assuming she's nodding her head. She's a nodder, so I know she's nodding. So,
yeah. I think the entire New York Now team were very touched by the raw and authentic emotion that we witnessed right in front of us, even on this virtual platform. It was intimate, and yet it was global. It was satisfying, and it was exciting, and I hope many more people get to enjoy and experience it. It was just so exciting.
Well, it will be the best 1 hour and 52 minutes you can watch.
Agreed.
And it is available for the entire awards is at thehandbagawards.com. So, and the crazy thing is we had 1,000 people watch and 1,000 people tune in to the Facebook Live within the first hour, which I was like, oh my God, this is for as much as something regarding handbags could go viral for us, for our industry, it was, you know?
And kudos to you for all that extra work that you took on and made it work, and your positivity and your enthusiasm. You had no doubt that, you know, we're moving forward and it's going to be great. And it was a great testament to your commitment to this and your passion for providing this amazing platform for these handbag designers. As you said yourself, a quick recap of the stats. 1,000 submissions globally from 5 continents, 28 countries.
Yep.
That is a true testament of the work and effort and passion that you have put into this, and delighted that you were able to share this with our audience today. Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I would love to thank New York Now for your support, for being part of this. I truly think it is the best trade show, and I am not a biased person. I'm not. I've watched so many of them, and I was blown away by the assortment, the energy, the smells, so many candles. And just by, having a handmade section, having green being such an important part, social responsibility being such an important part. And the fact is that, we're all looking for something that's going to make us feel good. And whether it's walking a show or buying it from somebody who you haven't bought anything from, that I truly think that's going to be the wave. The wave of handbags is going to be having a functional utilitarian bag that might not have any bells and whistles, and then getting something that's going to make you feel good. Because after this, nobody can wear lipstick. No one sees it. And as soon as the masks are off, let me tell you, I'm expecting a lot of glitz and glam coming back. And I'm sure wherever you can find it, it will be located at the heart of New York now. So I'm happy to be part of that.
Excellent. Well, we are more than delighted to be working with you and partnering with you and helping support your efforts. We were very honored to sponsor the Best Handbag, the overall Style and Design Best Handbag Award this year. And a shout out and congratulations to the winner, Alexandra Klimek from Poland.
Oh my God. Her bags are amazing.
Right?
Amazing.
Right? But it has been absolutely delightful to speak with you today.
To learn more and experience the show, please log on to www.thehandbagawards.com. To learn more about the fairy godmother of handbags and industry expert Emily Blumenthal, please log on to emilyblumenthal.com. Thank you for listening to the New York Now podcast. Make sure to tune in weekly for engaging and insightful conversations touching on the most relevant topics facing our community today. Visit NewYorkNow.com to learn more about our market and how you can join in on the conversation.